So much, Heather and Brittany. Breaking overnight, 2 police officers were shot while confronting a suspect with a gun. The violence all unfolded in Elmhurst, Queens.
In recent years, a violent gang has infiltrated New York City, creating chaos and posing a serious threat to local communities. Originating from one of the most dangerous criminal networks in Latin America, their illegal activities include extortion, drug trafficking, and human smuggling. Law enforcement, particularly the NYPD, is now working around the clock to stop their growing influence. Let's explore how this dangerous group is affecting the city and the efforts to contain their spread. The rise of the Tren de Aragua, a violent Venezuelan gang, has become a significant challenge for the NYPD as it battles the gang's growing presence in New York City. Originating in Venezuela's prisons, Tren de Aragua has spread rapidly across Latin America and is now infiltrating urban areas of the U.S., including New York, over the last 2 years. Their activities involve extortion, kidnapping, drug trafficking, and arms smuggling, with many of their crimes preying on vulnerable Venezuelan immigrants. This gang's violent reputation and swift expansion have posed a major threat to local law enforcement, particularly the NYPD, which is struggling to contain their influence. The Tren de Aragua takes advantage of the influx of migrants fleeing Venezuela's economic collapse, often coercing them into criminal activities to fuel their operations. These migrants, escaping poverty and political instability, are frequently drawn into a cycle of exploitation, further enhancing the gang's control. Tren de Aragua's ability to embed itself within immigrant communities has made it especially hard for police to uproot. In the past 2 years, the NYPD has reported a steady increase in crimes associated with Tren de Aragua, ranging from petty theft to violent shootouts. The gang's evolution from committing small-time crimes, such as shoplifting and minor thefts, to more serious offenses like armed robberies, drug trafficking, and clashes with rival gangs, has been alarming. One of the most significant concerns is the gang's involvement in smuggling weapons and illegal goods into New York City. This has made it harder for local authorities to keep the city's crime rates under control. Their growing involvement in human trafficking, targeting vulnerable migrants, is another serious concern, as these individuals are often forced into modern-day slavery to pay off debts incurred while escaping Venezuela. The NYPD has escalated its efforts to dismantle Tren de Aragua's operations through increased surveillance, undercover missions, and community outreach programs. These methods, although effective to some extent, have not been enough to completely uproot the gang. Tren de Aragua's scattered, decentralized structure makes it difficult to track and arrest key members. Even when the police do succeed in making arrests, the gang's ability to quickly replace members complicates efforts to fully dismantle their networks. This has led to fears that the situation may worsen before it improves, particularly if the gang continues to spread to other U.S. cities. The gang's growing influence in the U.S. mirrors its dominance in South America. For years, Tren de Aragua has terrorized countries such as Venezuela, Bolivia, Colombia, Chile, and Peru. Retired Colombian General Oscar Naranjo, a former vice president and chief of the Colombian National Police, described Tren de Aragua as the most disruptive criminal organization operating nowadays in Latin America. This gang started as a prison gang in Venezuela, operating from within the notorious Tocoron prison, where its leaders had complete control. In September, Venezuelan authorities raided the prison and found luxury amenities such as a swimming pool, restaurants, and a large arsenal of weapons, including machine guns and thousands of rounds of ammunition. Tren de Aragua's influence grew after 2015 when they formed an alliance with the Primeiro Comando da Capital, a powerful Brazilian criminal group. This partnership allowed the gang to expand rapidly across South America, gaining control of drug trafficking routes and expanding into other illicit activities, such as human trafficking and extortion. In Colombia, Tren de Aragua has been particularly active in the border town of Villa del Rosario, where it runs sex trafficking operations alongside the rival guerrilla group, the National Liberation Army. These groups exploit Venezuelan migrants and impoverished Colombians, coercing them into sex work and trapping them in a cycle of debt. The U.S. State Department has documented thousands of victims of Tren de Aragua's criminal activities, including kidnapping, extortion, drug trafficking, and murder. The gang's presence in the U.S. became more evident in recent years as members began following migration routes from South America into Texas, New York, and other states. Customs and Border Protection and the FBI have confirmed the gang's infiltration of U.S. communities, with several cases involving alleged members of Tren de Aragua. In Texas, for example, Border Patrol Chief Jason Owens identified 58 suspected gang members between the 2023 fiscal year and May. He warned that Tren de Aragua, known for its violent tactics and involvement in sex crimes, drug trafficking, and murder, is the most powerful gang in Venezuela and poses a growing threat to U.S. law enforcement. One particularly notable incident in New York involved a 19-year-old Venezuelan, Bernardo Raul Castro Mata, who shot 2 police officers. Castro Mata, who entered the U.S. illegally and had tattoos associated with Tren de Aragua, has been charged with various crimes, though he has pleaded not guilty. This incident highlighted the growing concern among law enforcement officials about the gang's potential for violence in New York City. In one of the most serious crimes connected to Tren de Aragua in the U.S., a woman in Louisiana called 911 in April to report that she was being held against her will and forced into sex work. She was being coerced into paying off a $30,000 debt to a human trafficker who had helped her enter the U.S. Authorities arrested 3 Venezuelans involved in the trafficking ring, one of whom was identified as a leader in the operation. The traffickers were running stash houses across several states, including Louisiana, Texas, Virginia, New Jersey, and Florida, where victims were held and exploited. These incidents demonstrate the extent to which Tren de Aragua has already established a presence in the U.S. However, it is still unclear how deeply entrenched the gang is in American communities, as their operations remain relatively underground. Some Venezuelan immigrants have already begun to see the same types of criminal activities in the U.S. that they fled from in Venezuela, raising concerns about the gang's growing reach. One former Venezuelan police officer, Alvaro Boza, who now lives in Florida, recounted how the gang's power forced him to leave his country. He described how Tren de Aragua brutally murdered a fellow officer who refused to cooperate, shooting him 50 times and dragging his body through the streets as a warning to others. This type of violence has instilled fear in communities across Venezuela and is now creeping into the U.S. The growing concern over Tren de Aragua's presence in the U.S. has prompted Republican lawmakers, including Florida Senator Marco Rubio and Representative Ana Maria Salazar, to call on President Biden to officially designate the gang as a transnational criminal organization. They argue that if the gang is not stopped, it could bring the same level of chaos to the U.S. that it has already inflicted on South America. The lawmakers' request underscores the need for a coordinated federal response to combat this escalating threat. While the NYPD continues to crack down on Tren de Aragua's operations in New York City, the fight is far from over. The gang's flexible and decentralized structure makes it difficult for law enforcement to dismantle its networks completely. As the NYPD and federal agencies work together to stop this transnational criminal organization, New York City must remain vigilant in its efforts to protect its residents from the growing threat posed by Tren de Aragua. So, let's end the video. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay updated on more stories like this. Thanks for watching.